Every time Blake and I talk to someone in the crypto community, you guys say you love it. And so we're back with another episode from the founder of OpenSea. If you don't know what OpenSea is, you are probably living in a box somewhere, because it is not only one of the biggest companies in all of NFTs, but it's where Blake spends most of his money on NFTs currently. Blake, what NFTs do you own right now?
Oh man, I own too many is the real truth. A lot of profile picture projects and a lot of art blocks projects, but I mainly as a fan and just like an early mover to the space. I think we're in the very early days of all of this, and for me, I'm just excited to be along for the ride and watching OpenSea become this dominant platform of just as a marketplace for everyone, both on primary and secondary sales, has been incredible to watch, and I'm super excited to have Devin here to talk with us.
One stat you threw out to me earlier was that August of last year, they were doing $1 million in GMV. And now if we fast forward to today, they're doing $3.4 million in GMV, which is like unheard of growth in this space. But I think it's just a testament to the power of NFTs.
3.4 billion.
3.4 billion. Sorry, 3.4 billion. It's just kind of like the power of NFTs to date. But I think the other interesting stat that you threw out was there's only like 250,000, maybe a little over that number, transacting on OpenSea. And so the opportunity for them to grow based on those numbers is infinite.
Yeah, I mean, as of right now, like they're already doing more gross merchandise volume than some public companies like Etsy, and we have OpenSea doing 3.4 billion in gross merchandise volume with only 280,000 active users, and let's define active users as someone that's done at least one transaction, and so and that's with the barriers being high of like you have to go and buy your cryptocurrencies on some other platform, then transfer to another wallet, and so we're at arguably the earliest point of all of this, and so you can imagine that OpenSea just continues to be, they might actually be the Amazon of the digital world, and that's why I'm just so excited that we have Devin here. I mean, we might be talking to the next Jeff Bezos.
You're absolutely right. This is the rocket ship, I think, that most of the investors wanted to get on in the crypto community. And so it's been interesting just watching this company grow, and I'm excited to learn more. So I think just to start, I'd love for you to just give our viewers like a brief overview of OpenSea and just like how it started and how you founded the company.
So OpenSea is an NFT marketplace, which means that it's a place where you can buy and sell any NFT on the blockchain. So we allow people to buy and sell things like game items, digital art, event tickets, all sorts of NFT experiments. And OpenSea is also a place where you can kind of go explore and discover new NFT projects. So it's almost like a search engine for NFTs as well. In terms of how we got started, we started in late 2017, and it really emerged from just being interested in crypto more generally. So we, at the time, there was a lot of excitement around ICOs and sort of decentralized marketplaces for X. So we went to a lot of meetups in San Francisco, learned about all of these things, and just got deeper in the space, and eventually knew we wanted to kind of do something in crypto. It was just a matter of what. And the first sort of attempt at bringing NFTs mainstream occurred in late 2017 with CryptoKitties, which was a digital cat breeding game where the cats were these NFTs. And that really sparked the interest in building more NFT stuff from a lot of developers, including ourselves. So that's when we sort of had this idea for an NFT marketplace, and then continued building it over the last roughly 4 years.
Wow. And I guess maybe taking a step back, like how would you describe what an NFT is? Like, because I think there's so many different definitions or perspectives of what an NFT actually is. Like, how do you think about what an NFT is?
Yeah, I think to me, an NFT is, I guess it depends on the audience, right? So you can kind of explain it to people who understand how the internet works, or like sort of the basics of programming standards and stuff like that. And that's actually, I think, the more interesting way, which is sort of, it's a new standard on the internet that allows you to have property rights baked into a digital item, right? So it's a way of saying, I own this digital item, and this digital item could represent anything you want, right?
I'm curious, just from a when you think about who is actually creating NFTs, do you think that those are, or I guess we could say minting NFTs, are those primarily artists right now, or how do you think about like the just persona of someone that is minting NFTs in general right now?
In terms of kind of the profile of people, we're seeing a lot of excitement from across the board, like photographers, musicians, digital artists, athletes. All of these people are starting to experiment with it and see what resonates. But the interesting thing is that if you look at kind of the numbers, most of the NFT volume numbers have come from these more crypto native communities of people, which is kind of an interesting phenomenon.
I saw this stat a couple months ago that now there's more Ronin wallets in the Philippines than bank accounts. And so I think, like, I'm from small town North Dakota. Like, I think where I come from, nobody knows what the hell an NFT is. And if they do, there's still like this weird barrier of entry to like figure out how to get Ethereum, move it to a MetaMask, buy, an NFT on OpenSea. Have you guys thought about like, how do you make this process easier? Because I think there's still a huge market out there for people that know what an NFT probably is or are doing research, but it's just really difficult right now to buy one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, we are actively kind of working on things that will help in that arena. Not saying that this is the wrong approach, but, if you look at something like Top Shot, there's some frustration around like what you're allowed to do with your Top Shot cards and how quickly you can withdraw your money and all of these things. So I think you just have to strike the right balance where you do push people to become a little more crypto native, because there's a lot of really interesting benefits to that, right? The sort of interoperability across different applications. But then you kind of figure out what are the chunks that you can shave off and make easier for people. So, getting crypto, for example, is still really challenging and typically requires going to an exchange. So we're working with folks to try to smooth that process.
Obviously, like Blake and I are, pretty deep in the creator economy, and I work with a lot of different creators and influencers. Have you seen any interesting creator projects? And like, do you think that the creator economy and just influencers in general are going to play a big role in NFT projects going forward? I mean, obviously, like we've seen people like Logan Paul do, I can't remember, Crypto Zoo. I think he did something called Dink Doink. Have you seen anything interesting coming out of the creator space?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I think we're seeing lots of experiments, and some of them are like deeply resonating with people. Others are maybe not working as well. There was, I don't know if you'd call him a creator, but sort of like Mike Tyson, more of a public figure, but like he collaborated with a crypto artist to do these sort of really interesting NFTs, and they really resonated with people, and I think people really liked them. Opening up to, the higher end, right, and being able to sell to a dedicated fan that wants to buy this like one-of-a-kind collectible is actually a really interesting way for creators to monetize. And there's just so much opportunity out there. So I think it's really the early days.
I have to ask only because I'm sure people watching this are probably thinking of just like, do you think we're in a bubble right now, or like how do you think about the current market conditions and just like the world that we are in within NFTs? Because there's obviously a lot of hype and speculation, but how do you think about just like what this means, where we're at within the cycle, maybe overall?
Yeah, well, to be honest, I don't worry a lot about that, the question of like whether we're in a bubble. But if one had to like break it down, you could maybe look at it from like many different angles. One is like sort of trading or gross merchandise volume, like how much prices of NFTs, and you can say like, oh, maybe that's going to like come down over time, which I think is perfectly reasonable. And then you could also look at it from like a mind share perspective, like how many people are like obsessed with this thing and rallying around it, and how many startups are forming around it, and like how much are people talking about it. And there, it definitely seems like a lot is happening, and so maybe both of those things are at some like local maximum. That being said, like especially if you think about the second one, there's so much more to explore. Like this is such a broader like phenomenon than just ICOs or sort of capital formation in crypto and fundraising. Like the number and diversity of NFT projects is just staggering. Like you have incredible games being built, like social platforms being built. there's so much opportunity. It's so greenfield. And, from my vantage point, I'm just seeing like all sorts of really compelling talent pour into the space. I know we have a long way to grow long term. And I think, we may or may not be at a local maximum right now, short term.
What advice would you have for like creators, even let's just say talent in general? Because now we've seen like Mike Tyson and like all these different artists. We've seen a lot of people kind of maybe step in the space early on with one of ones, and now maybe they're doing, different projects. But is there any advice that you have for a creator who's maybe thinking like, I want to get into this space, I just don't know how to do it?
The reality is right now that a lot of the excitement is driven by sort of crypto culture and the people who are already in the space. We're not really at a place where like we're bringing in the masses, because I think the masses are still learning about how all of this works. Doing really creative stuff around leveraging existing projects, I think, is really compelling. I have yet to see just something where it's like really combining like all of the different profile picture projects. Like that maybe the other advice is like look at what's already been done like in 2018, 2019, and just kind of iterate on that. And like, all of the concept or most of the concepts and ideas are there. It's just they were sort of experimented with before the market was ready. So that would be my other advice.
Yeah, I would just add to that as well, where it's just like you have to do this in an authentic way, where you can't come in and just be a like random person saying, hey, I'm doing a project by my projects. Like you have to earn the respect of any community and do it in a thoughtful way. And so I think in general the internet is pretty good at sniffing out cash grabs, and if you're coming into the space for a cash grab, like it will be pretty quickly identified.
Yeah, I agree. I think from a creator perspective, the hard part is like, who do you talk to? Who do you go to? Like what artists exist? Like, and how do you get in contact with those artists? So there still isn't, I think, a good resource area for a lot of creators to go to for these projects. I think it's like, and not a lot of creators can like get to Gary Vee to have that conversation, right? Like I think Logan and Beast and some of those guys are lucky in that regard because they get to talk to all these people. So hopefully eventually there's like some resource that, helps smaller creators, at least in the arts and DIY space, like get into NFTs. But I mean, I think Blake and I are incredibly bullish on this space, especially on the game side of this, even though I think we're still so early on NFTs. And we appreciate you coming on and kind of talking through some of this stuff. And, we look forward to watching you guys continue to blow up as this like world matures, because I think like once we figure out the barrier of entry and allow like the masses to be able to buy NFTs, like that's when this is going to get really interesting for you guys as well.